Like, how do you tell a person that, hey, today is just one step of the rest of your life and there are going to be adjustments? How do you get that through to a client?
Oh, that's a good one. I forget who talks about this. I want to say it's Dr. Peter Attia, but he talks about the end of your life, what you want to be able to do in the last decade of your life. So if you feel like you're going to live to 100, what do you want to be able to do from 90 to 100? What do you want to be able to do? And that kind of opens up people's perspective, because that's a really deep thought to think about, right? And chances are the answer is not going to be, I want to be able to do a muscle up and I want to be able to run a sub 4 hour marathon. Chances are it's not going to be that. Chances are it's going to be, I want to be able to pick up my grandchildren, possibly my great grandchildren. I want to be able to walk up the stairs without huffing and puffing, simple things like that. And the fact that I have a client that's creeping up to his last decades, right? I have a direct example of what that might look like. So Roger, he used to be able to do lots of cool things that he can't necessarily do as well now, back, compared to when I first started working out with him. But, I can tell you now that, like, this guy is able to do, still to this day, a 6-minute plank without even blinking an eye. He sits there without moving, without budging, and can do a 6-minute plank. And the last time I tried to do a plank, I had money on the table. Actually, I was backstage at a concert, and me and a couple of the security guards, we were like, hey, let's see who can do a plank. How long do you think you can do a plank? And we put some money up, decent money. And for me not to lose any money, I had to get to 5 minutes. But for me to win a good chunk of money, I had to get to 6 minutes. And I could only do 5 minutes, which is really interesting, because the last time that I tried, I did 5 minutes and Roger did 6, and it's like, okay, that's great. But I just also went out for a 3.5-mile run today before we did this interview. He's not doing that. Right. So but he wants to be able to just go fish. He wants to be able to play lawn bowling. He wants to be able to shoot pool. He wants to be able to walk up the stairs. So if we're thinking about the long game, then chances are we might want to mitigate some of the damage we're doing to our bodies now. So if you're throwing 500 pounds on a deadlift simply because you can do it, you might think, like, how's my back? How's my knees? How's all these things going to be feeling when I get a lot older? Just something to consider.
Since you were on the road training celebrity clients, musicians, Roger Waters, like, how hard is it, I mean, to adapt in, like, just unconventional environments like that, and having to adapt on the fly?
I've done a number of tours, a handful of tours. I did a European tour with Madonna many years ago. And then I've done 2 world tours with Roger. And throughout all of those tours, a person like myself obviously gains experience. And I think in life and in career, it's all about experience, right? So as I'm kind of getting more mature and more experienced, I'm starting to realize that, okay, there's some things I can do to make my situation easier, to make my client situation easier. But some of the challenges that we were kind of discussing before we recorded, when it comes to being in Europe or anywhere sort of outside of the States, some of the things that become challenging for me is, like, simply getting packages, right? Like, the postal service and the packaging mailing system in the States is very efficient, and it's not as efficient in Europe. At least that's what I found. So here, when I'm in the States, if I want to get something, I'm pretty sure I can get it in a couple of days. Sometimes I can get it same day, or certainly the next day. But when you're in Europe, you kind of have to pack, like, you have to kind of try to guess what may occur, right? So you have to prepare for injuries. You have to prepare for gut situations, right? Like, you're in a foreign entity, you're eating foods that you're not used to eating. So I have to make sure to prepare, which also means I have a lot of baggage, right? A lot of luggage, I should say, because, it's like, if I'm in the States, I can travel home or I can have someone ship something to me really easily. But when I'm in Europe, it's like, good luck, trying to find something as simple as comfrey. Actually, Roger's wife is the one who told me about comfrey and the benefits of the healing properties of comfrey. And she was like, hey, Josh, Roger, his ankle is sore. He's limping. He can barely move. Do you know much about comfrey? And I'm like, I don't. I'm quick to admit if I don't know something, right? And I'm like, I don't. And she said, well, look it up and see if you think it might work. And I was like, yeah, this looks amazing. I'm definitely going to try to get it. And it took 3 months. No, not 3 months, 2 months. It took 2 months to be able to find something that was even close to what you can find here. And I got back to the States and I got it in 2 days, and it's amazing. It is really good stuff. But yeah, that's just among some of the challenges.
Transition. For a trainer, how important is it to get to know your client, to ask questions, to get their input on it, to get a better relationship and to progress down the road?
That's a great question. And I think it's one of the most important things there is when it comes to client trainer relationship, or just any relationship, period. Any relationship, period. The reason is because no one wants their time to be wasted. I certainly don't want my time to be wasted. And I'm certain that my clients don't want their time to be wasted at all. So with that understanding, why would we be doing something that is going to eventually waste your time, right? And so sometimes the only way to figure that out is through trial and error, right? Just kind of throwing things at the system and seeing what works, or simply asking questions. And sometimes when you ask questions, you can ask questions that are close-ended or open-ended. Obviously, we want to not go for the close-ended questions, because then it's just yes or no, and you don't really get much from that. You can look at body language. You can infer a lot of things based on those responses, but it's better to kind of find out why are you here in the first place? And then why do you think I'm here? And then that's a beautiful start to a conversation that goes a long way, right? Because, it's like, do I want to wake up at 5 a.m. to meet you at 6 a.m.? If you don't want to be here and I don't want to be here, then what are we doing? Over dinner, right? Let's not waste each other's time. If you're here because you really have a goal that you want to reach, then let me help you do that. If you think that I'm here simply because you're paying for me to be here, then you've got it all wrong, because that's not what I'm here for. And one of the reasons why I will continue to work with people like Roger until otherwise is because he wants to improve constantly. And I see that in his workouts. I see that in his music. I see that in his political beliefs. I see that in his humanitarian efforts. This man is trying to constantly improve till the day he dies. And that's something I can get behind. So no matter what the money is, I mean, the money is nice, of course, and the fame is nice. And to be able to say that I work with someone at that level is great. But ultimately, I'm doing it because he wants to be there and I want to be there. I don't want to go with a cookie cutter form of what someone else is doing or even what I've done in the past. I want to meet you where you are right now. And so Roger is very regimented, right? So he would go into the gym, put on his shoes, kind of do his own warm up, but he would go onto the elliptical first, and he would basically do the elliptical for about 5 or 10 minutes. And so the first day that I was to train him, I meet him at the elliptical, like, hey man, good to see you. And he looks at me, he's like, yeah, you too, head down, just, going after it. This guy is, he's a bull when it comes to working out. And I just kind of said to him, hey, do you mind stopping for a moment? And he was like, yeah, sure. I said, do you enjoy doing the elliptical? And he's like, actually, I hate it. Why do you ask? And I said, well, if you hate it, why are you doing it? And he was like, well, no one's ever really told me anything otherwise. I was told to do this as a warm up several years ago, and that's what I do. And so in that moment, I was like, aha, I automatically knew, just from experience, I knew that this is a guy that if you tell him to do something, he's going to do it, and he's going to continue doing it until you tell him otherwise. So I knew that there was a certain power in that. But then I also gained this respect from him, because I'm sure he thought, wow, this kid, I'm sure he calls me a kid because I'm much younger than him, but he's probably thinking this kid is probably something special, because he's actually caring about what I want to do and matching that with what I need to do. And then that's what built this beautiful relationship that we have over the years.
So when it comes to having your clients back, having total control of total care over him, how important is to put his needs first over, I guess, your career goals and what you think may be right for someone else? How do you put the client first at all times?
That is a very good question. And I think it comes back to understanding my role. And I think we all would do better by understanding our role. Sometimes it's easy to get into a situation where, you might feel like you become friends with your clients. And I certainly hope you do, or I certainly am friends with a lot of my clients, and I treat them as such. In some situations, it's like family, like Madonna, I'm like literally like a family member to her and her family. And I feel the same thing with Roger and my buddy Oscar Isaac, who, we've had some correspondence on before. We definitely have a family relationship, but when it comes to work, I have a very clear separation between work and everything else. So when it comes to work, I'm there to make sure to get the job done. And it's quite easy, actually, because it goes back to the old adage, don't bite the hand that feeds you. It's like, if I'm there and I'm paid very well looked after, why wouldn't I do everything in my power to make sure that I'm doing my job right? This guy he's about to be 80 years old and he's still touring the world. And he's, obviously he gets a lot of flack in the media for all the things that he's talking about. And that doesn't go unnoticed, right? Like that has a big stress on him as a person, let alone him as the entity that is Roger Waters and Pink Floyd. But I have to sit there and think about all the implications that he has to go through in order to be able to do what he's doing. And so if I'm overtraining him, I'm not doing my job right. If I'm not training him enough, I'm not doing my job right. So I have to do everything in my power to make sure that I find that, I guess the best way to call this, or the best phrase, is balance. I need to be able to balance work and play and everything else. And once I take care of my job, then everything else becomes quite easy, So yeah, putting him first or putting clients first is something that I probably do too much. And I've had to kind of take a step back every once in a while to say, all right, I need to focus on me. I need to focus on my family. I need to focus on my friends, but never at the cost of losing a client or burning a bridge.
There. When it comes to unconventional training, something like a rope flow that you do a lot of, like how hard to sell is it to a person who says, hey, I'm here just for the weights, I'm here just for the normal treadmill conditioning? How do you sell something new can be very beneficial for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'm laughing because I feel like nowadays I don't have to sell anything, to be honest with you, and to be completely honest. And I know that's not what you mean necessarily, but I feel like if I have to pitch something, then I'm going about it the wrong way. So what I try to do is lead by example. And I would say that one of the easiest tools to do that is social media. So if you use social media in a way that is beneficial, in a way that highlights the plethora of modalities and tools and experiences out there, then I feel like people come to you with questions like, hey, what is that rope thing that you've been doing? I'm like, oh, if I'm in person with them, a lot of times I have the rope with me. So I just toss it to them and say, hey, let's just, let you discover what it is in real time. But now if you don't have the opportunity to have the person in front of you to give them sort of an assessment or an initial session with the rope flow or tools like that, then my hope is that when I talk about it on my podcast or when I'm putting out content, my hope is that people see me with authenticity and they see that chances are if I'm promoting something or quote unquote selling something, it's been vetted and there could be some benefit for you as well. That's it. And if a person doesn't believe the hype, then it's not for them. That's it. For me, I think it's very simple. But I do get resistance from clients for various things, right? Like they say, oh, I'm not going to do a back bend because it's, crazy, or I'm not going to crawl on the floor because, I'm just not going to get on the floor. It's dirty. Obviously, I can push back a little bit, but I then will try to find a way to understand what the hesitation, where the hesitation is and where it's coming from. And then that ends up being a beautiful transition or full circle moment back to eventually doing it and showing them that, you can be a little less rigid. I won't have you doing anything simply because I think it looks cool, right? I'm going to have you do things with a certain knowledge that this may help you specifically. This is a prescribed session for you. And, getting into a crawling position takes us back to the movement milestones that we've all gone through since we were infants. And so sometimes the best way to understand gait issues and movement defaults is to put them in to the beginning stages of the movement milestones, right? So if I explain that to someone and they come back to me and say, yeah, but I just don't want to do it, then I kind of file that and go, okay. All right, there's something there. There's some trauma there, right? But I don't say that. I just go, okay, there's something there. Or something like with the rope flow. I was doing a session. I've done many sessions with Roger. I mean, most of my clients will do the rope flow. And I was doing a session with Roger, and I kind of noticed that he's such a perfectionist that when he can't get one of the moves right, he beats on himself. He's hard on himself. And he's like, come on, you lanky prick. This is what he says, right? This is like a common thing that he says to his alter ego. And there's a couple times I say, hey, be gentle with yourself. It's okay. You beating up on yourself is not going to make you get that movement any better. I said, in fact, because he's a very good pool player. Roger is, right? Very good pool player. And he's actually taught me to become a very good pool player. I can say that now. And he's coached me into saying, hey, when you shoot a shot, stay down, stay in position, don't move until the ball finishes what it's doing, right? He said, because that's the best way to teach your brain on how to adjust. If the shot goes in, you did it well, everything's good. If the shot didn't go in, where do you make your adjustments? Now you know. But if you don't stay down, your brain can't really gather that. So then I flipped that back on him. So this goes back to what you were saying about getting to know your clients. So I put that back on him. And I said, hey, Roger, also remember, you told me to stay down and to let your brain process what just occurred. If you're telling yourself, come on, you lanky prick, you're not allowing yourself to process that movement. So let's go back and let's do it again. And then you see this beautiful evolution of him.